Hi folks, I'm Tony. This is Tuesday the 11th of February. It's just past 6 o'clock. We're outside the Bridewell Garda station. I'm here with Pat Closey and his good friend Andrew McCoast. Pat, as many of you may have already heard, was before the President of the High Court, who we can now call the fraud chancer or fraudulent chancer. In relation, just 1 second there, sorry, there's a bit of noise going back with the Lewis. Earlier on, Pat was before the President. There was people in the public, witnesses. Pat had to wait until 2:30 in the afternoon to be heard. As soon as Pat stood up, and this is his third occasion where he's demanded the fraud judge, Kelly, who has been making unlawful, illegal orders against Pat's 97-year-old mother, keeping her detained, and against thousands of others through an illegal British law, the Warda Court system. Pat actually, at this point, or earlier on today, he stood up. He requested once again and demanded Kelly to answer his question to prove that he is the successor to the Lord Chancellor, which he has not done. Pat demanded the answers. Kelly then said he was in contempt, which Pat wasn't, and he demanded that the 12 Gardaí that were conveniently present arrest Pat for contempt of court, and he fled for the third court sitting. He fled the court, clearly covering up his guilt. And he wanted to continue his orders without Pat asking these legitimate, rightful questions, which is exposing his illegal nobility or title of nobility as Lord Successor, or as successor to the Lord Chancellor. Pat, can you just briefly explain? I know you're tired. You know, you've been up since 4 a.m. You know, you've been treated again like, as if you don't exist, really. Can you just explain in summary how you feel and what you think is the next steps?
Yeah, the first thing I have to say is that the Gardaí that did ask me to come here to the Bridewell on foot of supposedly being in contempt of court, which I wasn't, because they treated me very well over here. They were very nice, and during my time here, I actually spent a lot of time lecturing them on the law and their constitutional rights. Some of their colleagues were laughing, but at the end of the day, they weren't laughing because these other guards were quite interested, and they learned a lot. And in fact, I recommended one of them, who was such a nice young fella, to get James Casey's book on constitutional law. I explained to him the fact that Judge Kelly is a fraud. He cannot hold the title of nobility under the Constitution, under Article 40.1 of the Constitution. And the very fact that he claims himself to be the self-proclaimed successor to the Lord Chancellor of Ireland is a fraud. I explained to him that I wrote to the Queen, and the Queen confirmed Ireland's sovereignty. She did not confirm that she gave a royal decree or the sign manual or the royal prerogative to Judge Kelly to exercise what are crown powers. 3 powers: legislative, executive, and judicial. That means legislative, the power to make laws; executive, the power to enforce those laws; and the power to judge on those laws. I asked Judge Kelly to step down today, that I had entered a conditional appearance to contest the jurisdiction, that I had written to President Higgins in closing the declaration, which I read out at the Mansion House on the 21st of January 2020 on Independence Day. That was signed by the people. I handed up a copy of that declaration to Judge Kelly to read. I told him that I had contacted President Higgins and the Chief Justice to say that we had a crisis, not alone for the fact that he is sitting as a government of one man in tandem with our own government.
So, Pat,
but not alone that, I said to him that the Courts of Justice Act 1924 has never been commenced, and I informed the Chief Justice because the Attorney General refused to produce or could not produce the commencement order, which was supposed to be made on the 5th of June 1924 to commence the Courts of Justice Act, that he did not produce it. That in fact we have a constitutional crisis, that all the courts are illegal and that the courts must cease operating. I asked Judge Kelly to step down and cease operating. The reason he wants to hold me in contempt is to silence me, to cover up the fact that he is responsible for the torture of my mother. And I also know he is responsible for the death of putting to death Mrs. Olive Carroll by taking her into custody, away from her family, forcing drugs on her and bad treatment when she was treated fine at home, to cover up again the HSE's mistakes. My mother is held a prisoner to cover up the HSE's mistakes and to cover up the fact that my mother has been used for drug trials with the most dangerous drug in the world, which is quetiapine, otherwise known as Seroquel. This is on the list of the 10 most fatal drugs in the world. But because I am protesting, and have protested since my mother was forced to be transferred to St. Finbarr's Hospital on the 14th of December 2016, and because we found out my mother was being used as a guinea pig, the HSE has this vindictive campaign to shut me up and to not let my mother be heard in court. However, I did play out her voice recording after Judge Kelly rose today at lunchtime when the case wasn't heard. I wanted the public to hear that my mother has been tortured.
So Patrick, in a nutshell then, you're saying not only is Peter Kelly a fraud, our whole court system is a fraud.
The whole court system is a fraud, and Judge Kelly is guilty of torture, contrary to the United Nations Convention on Human Rights Act.
What's the next step, Pat?
Not alone is he guilty, but he is in cooperation, in league with the HSE solicitors to bring these false affidavits and applications against me. My mother won her case. She has always maintained that she was of sound mind. Her voice recordings prove she was of sound mind. Judge Kelly has heard those recordings. The HSE solicitors have heard those recordings. The Court of Appeal have heard them, and the Supreme Court have heard them. My mother is perfectly lucid, but she is being detained in there to cover up the fact that she has been used for drug trials.
Patrick, I'm going to actually leave it at that because I know you're extremely exhausted. You know, you said you just wanted to do a short video. We will do a follow-up, an explanatory, because Pat's mentioned some words here that maybe people are not totally au fait with. But in a nutshell, Pat was detained to keep him quiet. He was detained unlawfully. He was detained by Judge Kelly, who is a fraud. He's part of a court system that is, Pat has proved, is actually fraud, completing fraud. We'll do a follow-up after this, Pat.
Yeah, and I just would like to say one last thing. I was standing up and I had the right to speak in the court. Just because Judge Kelly does not want to hear what I have to say, and the truth does not give him the right to order guards to hold me in contempt of court. No, he must listen to what I have to say because he has no power.
Okay, we're going to leave it at that, folks. Thank you very much. All right.